What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Truth Seeking Thursday. I'm Greg Dowd, joined here with Jay Young, and tonight we're going to talk all about the topic of conversation is learned helplessness. And um, but before we get into it, Jay, how's everything going with you?
Life's good. It's I appreciate a lot of what you're doing. You're putting together a lot of organization around the solar event, and that's so necessary. And I think some of us are trying to get together some training for firearms, and it's interesting to see. One of the reasons why I love the United States is because we actually, for the most part, we do have freedoms here. It's not perfect, right? We don't have it all, but we do. And obviously, I think a lot of us are Second Amendment devotees. We're lovers of individual liberty, and I'm just amazed at the number of people, even though we do have Second Amendment rights, the number of people who just have almost zero firearms experience. And one thing that is important, it's kind of like a personal mission for me, is to try to get people with just some basic um, handgun operation and marksmanship experience going on. And some of the people you and I both know, we're trying to get stuff together. So if we do that, that's great. And I'm fortunate. I've taught quite a few people in my life, basic handgun marksmanship and operations. And I'm I always appreciate the number of people who, if they're willing to listen, they can actually do really well. And in a short period of time, they can put all their shots in something about the size of the palm of your hand from about 7 yards away. And most people are surprised that you can do that in a short period of time. So, yeah, I'm stoked to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, I've been training with some firearms, and it is like like you can go shooting at a range and and go statically shoot at something at a
Right.
target, and but like um there's a whole lot of different aspects to training as well, where uh if you're in a real situation, like you're not going to be standing right there. In fact, if you're standing, you're probably dead.
You're
So
dead. Absolutely. Yeah.
uh, yeah, I took part in a training event up in Kentucky last month,
How
and
was it?
it was really good. It was put on by this guy Andrew. He does combat combat arts training, and he got together a bunch of different trainers in different aspects of not just shooting, but like bushcraft and medical stuff.
Hmm.
So there was the shooting component, and then there was also the medical and a bushcraft component to all the training, and a hand to hand training, force on force, hand to hand kind of you know here's how you can use some judo type moves and stuff
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
in a self defense situation. So yeah, it was a little bit of a lot of different stuff, and you could choose your courses that you wanted to take with the different instructors, and you just showed up to where their instruction was going to happen, and you took their class, and it was 4 hour classes. And the ones I took were like shooting on the move, and then
Yeah.
like working on grip with with your firearm, with your handgun.
Yeah. Most people mess up grip. They don't understand how important that is. It is the interface between you and the weapon.
Yeah, that really opened my eyes. Andrew taught that one, and yeah, your grip really changes how your round's going to go down range. So
Yeah.
if you have a really poor grip, then your accuracy is going to be really bad.
Yep.
And so yeah, I learned a lot with that, and then being able to shoot on the move, and like you know you you ideally want to like be moving in a diagonal to make yourself
Yep.
harder to hit.
Yep.
And so we're training on how you move while you may need to move off of a two-handed grip to you may need to go one-handed so that you can move in the right direction and still stay on target and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, but like if you starting at zero, you need to like make sure that you've got the basics down, like how you're gonna grip the weapon, how you're gonna acquire your target,
Mhm.
get on the target and start shooting accurately and get all the fundamentals down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think that a lot of people, many people in the United States and many people, especially on the other side of the political aisle, they think that it's just a matter of you just get up there and you just start slinging lead and then that's it, right? And then you're just gonna hit stuff and or you're gonna hit the target automatically. And they have no conception of the amount of effort and skill it takes to build up, to crawl, walk, run. So it's unfortunate that adds to the political climate in this country, that level of ignorance.
yeah, and if we want to be a free people, we have to take a lot of these things into our own personal responsibility.
Yeah,
So, for somebody that wants to live as free as possible, like your defense is that's with you, that's on you. So,
yeah, totally,
um,
totally agree.
and that comes with a lot of, I mean, to be truly free, you have to take on a lot of responsibility, and that comes with like how are you going to get your food if the power goes out? What's your plan for your power, man?
Yeah,
Like, how are you going to get access to your AI waifu if you can't,
yeah,
if
that's
you
right.
got no power, dude?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to put in my little promo video for the event. It's like, what's your plan, man? Are you tired of being a slave?
You got to practice your Alex Jones voice, right? You don't have a plan. You're gonna make the frogs gay, okay? You don't know how bad it could be.
What are you gonna do if you can't access your Chat GPT waifu
Right.
when the power goes out? Don't be a simp.
Tell that LLM what to do.
Yeah, man. So yeah, you got to really take on a lot of responsibility, and part of that comes with empowering yourself with some knowledge. And so, um, do you know where this idea, this concept of learned helplessness comes from?
Yeah, so I'd heard the term, but I'd never really done any research into it. And so it was interesting to see, to do a little bit of research into it. And I'd heard about this, um, the original experiment that was done back in the 60s with the dogs that they were given an electroshock. And I didn't know that fell into the category of learned helplessness. So that's what I'm aware of. But I don't know if there's more to it than that.
Well, we're gonna dive into it because it is very interesting, and this is like a lot of probably trained into a lot of us as Americans
Mm.
through our education system. And if you're aware of this, then you can take some actions to get yourself out of these situations. If you find yourself kind of in this repeating thought pattern of negativity where you're kind of just going down into a negative spiral that you think that there's no way out of. So, which is a lot of where it can lead to. But I have a resource for us that I've pulled up that comes from the Grand Theft World podcast,
Excellent. I like
and
them.
they get into this stuff, and it's a bit deeper than you think, and it kind of gets tied into to Epstein,
Okay.
because Epstein was funding the research that this guy was doing. Um, Siegelman, I believe, is his name, that was doing these experiments on animals. So, so yeah, we'll pull it up here and we'll give this a listen.
My history blueprint. Please
Yeah.
uncork your 10 years of knowledge on that.
Martin Seligman is the man behind the Jeffrey Epstein curtain. You know, people want the big names. They're familiar with the name behind the curtain, and that's Martin Seligman, but they haven't heard his name. Martin Seligman's considered by the elites to be the top psychologist on the planet, number 1, and then number 5 all time historically, because he developed the theory of learned helplessness by torturing dogs back in the 60s at UPenn. While at UPenn, what was going on at that time was MK Ultra research, the declassified documents unveiled. And Seligman, fast forward to after 9/11, was then approached by CIA agents who he taught his learned helplessness theory, who he had posited could apply to humans to keep them down. And then they took that theory and they used it as the basis of the CIA torture program for 9/11, Guantanamo Bay black site. And according to Seligman himself, there was an unnamed Israeli intelligence agent at one of these meetings he was at. And then move forward to 2003. By the way, Ted Kaczynski, his manifesto was inspired by Seligman. Ted Kaczynski writes, he says the people are the dogs who are being tortured in society. And he wrote all these letters while he was in prison. Fast forward to 2003, Epstein starts funding him in 2003. He funds the creation of the UPenn Positive Psychology Center. And that's where Seligman had done all his research. And then you go to 2007, you see that, or 2008, you see that plea deal. Well, there's a plea letter written that was what got Epstein that plea deal. There were 5 names mentioned in this plea letter. This is the document, which is not discoverable by Google. You got to find it on Pacer. Every time I put it online, my website's gotten taken down. And the 5 names are Bill Clinton, they are Martin Seligman, they're Martin Novak, they are Lawrence Cross, and they're Peter Schack. Those are the 5 names. And 3 of those that we know of continued to support and fund Epstein after he got out, because that document revealed that he funded their career and that they helped him get that deal. And Seligman is the only one in that document who has never been questioned ever that I can find about his relationship to Epstein, despite the fact that Epstein funded the creation of the Positive Psychology Center, which a year after Epstein got out of prison, received through that center to Seligman a $31 million no-bid contract to conduct psychological experiments that were widely viewed to be against the Nuremberg Code on the Army, because they had to comply. And his goal was to conduct experiments that got them to never question authority, to go into to kill people and think it's moral. That was his job. And they said he was the only one. And this whole program was funded by Epstein to begin with. And Seligman has been funded by the deep state, as they call it. I hate using that word. For 50 years. He's more powerful than any president. And he's had over 100. He's currently getting funding from the DOJ to conduct a world happiness experiment, to gather data from social media all around the planet, to create what's called psychological resiliency scores. The higher your score, the more compliant and conforming you are. The lower your score, the more of a problem you are, and the more policy needs to be created to deal with you. That's literally what his experiment is and what his work is. He's a behavioral psychologist. His dog.
Is this the guy?
Yeah, that's the guy. That's him right there.
All right. Born 1942.
Yeah, right. And no, there's no mention. He's, of course, part of the Edge Institute. There's no mention of this guy. There's no mention of this guy's relationship. He's never been. He got money after Epstein. He helped Epstein get out. It was revealed that he took money from Epstein. And then he got $30 million from the government to brainwash army soldiers into killing people more easily. That's always been the goal of propagandists. How do we overcome the barrier, the psychological barrier to killing other humans? And that is what Seligman is an expert. He is the head of the U.S. brainwashing industrial complex. He is the man behind the curtain. This is why we're never going to see real Epstein stuff. And I can show you the document. We can do it another time. I know you guys are on a tight time schedule. But I have all the documents on this. Like, I have the documents. I sound like Alex Jones. I have the documents.
I was just say, you got to do the impression when you say that.
I got to have the documents. But it's like the chalkboard that O'Keefe showed from Epstein's house. I know exactly what all of those words are a reference to, because I know the research that Epstein funded that they come from. Like all of this stuff is out. People are begging for something that's already out there. They just don't know how to find it. Right? It's all in court documents. The reason I always talk about this document, this plea letter written by Alan Dershowitz, I mentioned these are the only 5 specifically named people, is because they would never have allowed their names to be in that document if it wasn't willingly. This is the one where, like, we're helping this sex criminal get a deal. And 3 of them that we know of, the others have never been questioned. As I said, Clinton's been questioned, but never about this specifically. They said, we loved Epstein. They continued to take money from him. One of them said, my relationship with Epstein didn't hurt me. It actually uplifted my life. These are people who their financial well-being depended on Epstein, or who, I think Epstein's kind of a middle of the barrel, like sex addict who somebody else was controlling personally. So I say Epstein, I think is controlled through Epstein. But these are people who never denied the fact that they were Epstein like fanboys. And this Seligman guy has never received criticism ever. And yet he's the most powerful dude among all of these, more powerful than Trump or Clinton or any of them. And he worked with the CIA, he worked with the DOJ, and right now they're actually modeling an AI after him, the elites are, for transhumanistic purposes, because they're trying to figure out how to brain copy the smartest individuals to control society with onto a computer so they can continue using their knowledge in the future when they die.
The Seligman name did come up in One Nation Under Blackmail on pages 59 and 60. And basically, I'm trying to get my camera straight. Where's my producer? Oh, I'm the producer. Let's see. Now, there's a lot of interesting things on any given page in this book. But the French banking interests of the Seligman family were the punchline to a whole bunch of heavy-duty kind of pro-Zionist information going on. The Seligmans are worth mentioning because the family's main bank, J.W. Seligman, held accounts with the CIA-linked David Baird Foundation, previously mentioned in Chapter 4. So that's part of it. And then where's the other Seligman? Talking about Rothschild and BCCI. It's not a good page to be on, Seligman. So speaking of which, so this is page 60 of One Nation Under Blackmail, volume 2, volume dos. However, if I take you over to my history blueprint, I knew the name Seligman also appeared because he was a court factor. That's where that family got its money start. So you just heard Whitney refer to the bank as being an influential bank. It got Bleichroeder, Oppenheimer, Seligman, and Rothschild all were similar court exchange, like they're international monetary exchange. When you go to the airport, right? So they called them court factors or court Jews back then. That was the term. It's not my phrase.
It's Jewish, right?
Right. This also pertains to the Oppenheimer family, the banking, mining, and diamonds family. This ties into Cecil Rhodes and a whole bunch of other stuff. But the banking history that precedes, I don't know if he's related to the J.W. Seligman dynasty, but he certainly has a powerful role, as you were describing. And it would seem that he might be part of that same influential trail through history. And they're trying to, get a drop on humanity. They're trying to do what Norbert Wiener and these guys couldn't do back then.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like I said, these academics, these lead academics, they have him ranked as the #1 most influential psychologist in the world, 5th most influential of all time. And one other fact, and then I'll shut up, there was a doctor, a psychologist in Australia who was inspired by Seligman's work, who ended up writing the foreword to one of Seligman's books in like 2005 or 6, who conducted similar experiments to the learned helplessness dog experiments over there in Australia, who died in 2014. And I can't remember what country it was, but it was under mysterious circumstances, the way that it was described, right after he was accused of conducting learned helplessness type experiments on actual children over in Australia. And that man's name was Anthony Kidman, who is Nicole Kidman's father.
Yeah.
I have heard that her dad is was a powerful cattle baron in Australia, and that she was like royalty down there. And the first movie I saw her in when I was a kid was BMX Bandits, which is like an Australian BMX-y type movie. And so she's a child actress. and her dad just, that's pretty good detail. I don't think that I've read that on her dad before. How did you come about that information? What's the source on that?
Well, I got went stuck on researching Seligman and his connections. I started looking at who he influenced, and Kidman came up, and I saw that this guy Anthony Kidman wrote the foreword for one of his books, and so I looked into him, and I found out he was Kidman's dad. Now, did he do what he was accused of over in Australia, of doing learned helplessness experiments on children? I don't know. I couldn't know. I know he was accused of that, and I know that when you look at his research, because he wrote papers on it, that he did learned helplessness experiments on other animals. So Seligman did them on dogs. He did them on goats and some other animals. And now I don't want to jump to conclusions. I would ask questions if I were investigating it over there. Is it plausible that he would do them on children? If he's going through the line, yeah, it's plausible. That doesn't make him guilty of it, okay? But you never got to see an investigation because he died. But he did write the foreword. So I don't know if he's guilty of that. I do know that he was inspired by Seligman's work and that he was working at the University of Sydney. And that at the time, I can't remember the name of the MK Ultra. We had like a head MK Ultra guy for our intelligence agencies who then went over to Sydney and started doing similar experiments over there. Because that's what we do. We're like, well, we can't do them over here anymore. Let's go to another country where we don't have to worry about people's rights. Like the Tuskegee experiments going over to Guatemala. They did that with MK Ultra. And her dad was involved in that. And then he died. So I can't prove it, but there's questions to be asked.
Now, what are your thoughts on that, man? Like, Nicole Kidman, wasn't Nicole Kidman in Eyes Wide Shut? Was she the actress in Eyes Wide Shut?
She and Tom Cruise were in 2 movies together, Days of Thunder and Eyes Wide Shut. And that was on one of them.
Well, that's interesting if her dad there was involved with these experiments, and that was kind of a peer into like what the elites are up to, basically.
Yeah, it's I'll
have to dive into that more, but
to see when Seligman was doing this back in the 60s, and it was crazy to see just how crazy the CIA went in the 60s and the 70s.
Nicole Kidman did a commercial where she is eating bugs. Yeah.
Yep, that's true. I saw that commercial. Yeah, and it's interesting that Kathy said that because she had plates of bugs in front of her, and she had a little bowl, a pair of chopsticks, and she only ate one, and she really had to just force the smile, to grit her teeth and smile through it, and it was really interesting. And she only ate one.
Trying to get everybody to like, hey man, just eat the bugs. It's great.
Yeah. So, by the way, if you only eat bugs, does that make you a carnivore?
Insectivore, I guess.
Insectivore.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
So, I appreciate what they said around the CIA, and there was such amazing, for good or for bad, there's this amazing explosion that had gone on with the military and the CIA in regards to a lot of their in-depth research around psychology, right? And I think that so much of what they did was, again, I'm removing morality and ethics out of this. It was really cutting edge stuff that they did, and we're seeing the effects of that. One book that I recommend that people look into is a book called On Killing, and I put it out in our private chat, and it's by Colonel David Grossman. He was a professor at West Point for the Army. And it was really good, and it gets into basically the 3 psychological aspects of how do you get someone who is not a killer to become a killer, what is the psychology during the killing process, and then where's the psychology after killing. And he literally wrote the book on killing, on the topic of killing. And for anyone who has even a remote interest in it, I really recommend that you take a serious look at this book. And I think I could see a lot of what Seligman did kind of spilling over into this. And it gets into the whole concept of how the military, after World War II, between World War II and Vietnam, the military did a very good job of developing the stimulus response model and getting people using reactive targets and getting people to really, shoot their weapon in a very accurate but reactive way to targets, and then getting that feedback tool, right? And so we're talking about back in the 50s and the 60s, having that target react when it's hit. And the military just did a great job of doing that. And I could see a lot of the psychological training that Seligman did possibly spilling over into the CIA and the military.
Well, yeah, apparently that these techniques were used in torture in Guantanamo Bay. So let's look at what the experiment is actually, because I think that'll help kind of set the stage. You might be still wondering what this whole learned helplessness is, why we're talking about it even. The foundational experiments and theory of learned helplessness began in Pennsylvania in 1967 as an extension of his interest in depression. Siegelman and colleagues accidentally discovered that the experimental conditioning protocol I like how they say accidentally, conditioning protocol they used with dogs led to behaviors which were unexpected, in that under the experimental condition, the recently conditioned dogs did not respond to opportunities to learn to escape from an unpleasant situation. Electric shocks of moderate intensity. A fictionalized account of the experiment and illustration of anti-vivisection arguments about the ethics of shocking dogs in the name of psychological research occur in clinical psychologist Guy Holmes' novel, The Black Dogs of Glassland. At the time and in subsequent years, very little ethical critique of the experiment was published, although definitional and conceptual issues were critiqued. So yeah, they basically were shocking a dog in a situation to where the dog didn't feel like it could escape the shock. And so it just goes into just giving up, basically, feeling like it's hopeless. And so Siegelman developed this theory further, finding learned helplessness to be a psychological condition in which a human being or an animal has learned to act or behave helplessly in a particular situation, usually after experiencing some inability to avoid an adverse situation, even when it actually has the power to change its unpleasant or even harmful circumstance. Siegelman saw a similarity with severely depressed patients and argued that clinical depression and related mental illness result in part from a perceived absence of control over the outcome of a situation. So yeah, that's what this is all about, and how you can get yourself into a trap of learned helplessness by saying, hey, I guess kind of holding yourself into a victim mentality, really, that I don't have the ability to change my circumstances because X, Y, and Z have happened to me, and they keep repeatedly happening. And now I feel like I'm in such a stuck position that whatever I do will not change my circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so it leads to this feeling of hopelessness. while you still have the ability to get yourself out of that circumstance, you've given up because you
Yeah.
don't think that there is a way, because everything else you've tried has all ended in some type of failure.
Yeah. It seems to be, this is almost the dark side of Pavlovian conditioning, right? With Pavlovian conditioning, we can create a positive response out of a positive stimulus, right? Dr. Pavlov rings the bell and the dogs salivate for it, right? And this is, to the point where creating enough stimuli, but of a certain class, actually removes the ability to create any kind of response, any sort of positive response. So it's that extended conditioning to do the exact opposite, and it really is just, in my humble opinion, just evil, that can be done. Obviously, to dogs it was bad, and this is done to humans all the time when they're children.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at like, you're very, very much like scolded for failure, right? In like the modern educational system. So if you get the wrong answer, then like that's bad. Like you can't. And so after a while, you start thinking like, well, I'm just not gonna say anything because I'm always getting it wrong. Like,
Yep.
no, I'm never getting the right answer. Like I feel
Yep.
like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And you carry that further on into your life, and when you're thinking about maybe working through an issue that you're having, that type of programming sticks with you. And so the question is, what do you do to break this if you find yourself stuck in this kind of a situation? Like, how do you get out of this pattern? How do you get out of these feelings and these thoughts, and break that and move forward in a positive way? So what are your thoughts on that?
So from what I've seen around, so let's if we put this on the broader category of habits, right? For the most part, for the amount of time that it takes to create a habit, you're going to take just about almost the same amount of time to break and reform a habit. In whatever that is, it could be kids brushing their teeth, or looking both ways before you cross the road. And this is something that's so deep and pervasive. We're talking about possibly decades of indoctrination and exactly an experience that happens with that. So I'm not saying it would take decades to undo, but expecting it's going to happen in a few days or months is probably pointless. It could take years to really have a person come full circle. So I think the very first thing I would do if I were working with someone is just have that expectation, right? That it could take years, and because we are living neural nets, right? These neural nets take a while to shift in their perception and their operation, right? We're not just hard drives that you could just change the program and the state flips over. So I think that's the first thing to do. And I think that looking at this as a therapist would be important. Really understanding who am I dealing with here? What is their background, and trying to understand what's going on, and then trying to personalize some sort of treatment plan for the individual. And usually that involves really getting the person to see that there are other options available, because that's usually how we operate, right? We're not aware of other options, right? Especially when we just kind of float through life. We have no way of knowing anything else. And so I think making them aware that there are other options, making them aware that behaviors that they're engaging in they're not on autopilot, right? At some level we choose these things. I don't want to get into the whole concept of free will. That's a whole other topic. And then helping a person see that there can be other paradigms that they can choose at that point. And then from there, it's a matter of really customizing the plan and the implementation for that individual.
Yeah, I like that. It's it is one of those, you have to realize that no problems are permanent and that you have the ability to overcome whatever you're going through. You have that power within you that you can overcome the challenges and the things that you're facing, and that it's not hopeless. There's solutions that you can implement. And like one of the things that, for me in working on myself is writing things down. Like you want to you want to start doing something differently than and taking action. Then a good place to start is to start writing some stuff down. When it's all in your head and you just leave it up in your head, then these things they can stay in there and they can ruminate in your mind. But in order to pull that from your mind and actually begin to take steps, you have to kind of break those things down, which may seem so overwhelming in your mind. But if you can write them down and you can write down the manageable, actionable steps that you need to take to get to this next position, then it doesn't become so daunting and overwhelming at this point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really appreciate what you just said. I was talking with one of my best friends yesterday. He was going through an experience. I'll say, just leave it at that. And I'd recommended, I said, one thing I recommend is exactly what you just said. Write it down, get it out of your brain housing group, get it on paper, virtual or physical. And then I think that, you just made a great point in terms of it defines the issue, whatever the issue is, right? And I think we as neural nets, we have a tendency to like you said, ruminate, and we spin around the axle. And if we don't have that healthy mechanism for getting these issues out of our brain housing group, then we spiral very, very quickly. And I think that's very healthy. One thing my dad would do when I was younger is if he had an important subject that he wanted to talk to me about, he'd actually write me a letter. And I really, as I got older, I really appreciated that, because it was his way of having calm and really rational intellectual conversation with me, and trying to avoid getting emotional about something. And I really appreciate the fact that he did that. And it was my way of, it was his way of helping me listen, and I think that was so important. And I'd say every single letter that he wrote to me about a serious topic, I really listened, because of it. So I think that's the positive side to what you're talking about.
Wow, that's cool, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you did that.
So basically, like something important that he wanted to get across to you, he would
Yeah.
write you in a letter form.
He did. And sometimes these would be, they were not short letters. I remember one he wrote to me. It was several pages long, and it was very supportive. And there was no way I could look at that and say that he wasn't trying to be positive, that he wasn't trying to be supportive of me as a human being and as his son. Because the good thing about it was, by doing this, he got to read it and reread it and recompose it several times, right? To iterate it, so he could get it down so something was concise, so I'd actually read it, but then also check, like, hey, am I coming across in a positive fashion? Now, granted, not everyone has the wherewithal to write, and we all have different skills. He's a decent writer, so I just appreciate it. But he played to his strengths. That's the point of the whole thing, right? And he found a method that worked for him. And and it was a great way that he could communicate with me with the least amount of emotion, especially irrational emotion, and avoid that spiral that can happen between two people going back and forth. And you know, to type into the subject, it was the exact opposite of learned helplessness. It was enablement in positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because you're getting something supportive that is kind of telling you that you can do whatever you're looking to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the comments here. I really appreciate everyone with the comments. And
This is a good one here.
yeah, go for it. That's the one I wanted to read. Go for it.
Yeah, Mad Max VH4PW says the hardest part for those individuals stuck in that mindset is to find and reach out to people who are or can be a good support group.
Yeah.
I
That's a great one. And I think this gets into the whole concept of group therapy, you know, and which I can see there being huge benefits, because these are people who had similar experiences. They're not just lecturing and saying you got to do it this way. They're like, I'm on the same journey. I'm just a few feet down the road from you.
I think in general, just finding some people that are like people that who you wish to emulate yourself, like people that have achieved some stuff, that have built something themselves. And if that's where you're looking to go and you want to get yourself out of a situation, to surround yourself with those kind of people.
Yeah.
Because what is that saying? Like you're like the 5 people that you're around the most or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, so you want to be around high achieving people. If you want to be a high achiever, like you want to surround yourself with those type of people that are already in that position themselves, and glean as much as you can from them while you're around them,
Yeah.
Ask as many questions as you can to see what they did, what they're doing, what's going on, to maybe help you in some kind of way. Find people like that. Don't be hanging around the same people that are always negative all the time, or like doing stupid crap, and like you do stupid things, you win stupid prizes, like you're gonna end up in bad situations and go further down into that spiral, and it's gonna look even more hopeless for you. But like, definitely don't stick to yourself and just cloister yourself off. That's like the worst thing you could do, because then it's going to get a lot worse. Like, I found myself in these positions in the past,
Yeah.
where I've gotten real down on myself, and I wanted to withdraw.
Yeah.
Because if like it felt too painful to go and like face things. But it wasn't until I went out and started to face some things and challenge myself a little bit more, that I started to work through those things.
So can we dig into that just a little bit, because that's a really good point. Is, what does that spiraling process look like? And how does it manifest? And I think it's easier for us to look at this from the point of view of, right, there's the individual, but then there's the other aspect of, there could be a group of individuals, and we've seen that learned helplessness can spread like wildfire, right? And I think that we've seen this with groups of individuals, and that's where panic sets in, right? Is there's in a sense of, I can't do anything to help myself. There's some sort of impending doom, and people still have a desire to avoid, physical pain, physical agony, and there's no, there's a collective feel that, every man for himself, right? And there's nothing that we can do. There's no methodical approach. There's no rational approach that we can take to get out of this situation, whatever that situation is, right? It could be a burning building. right? Or it could be an entire society or culture has been beaten down by its government, and they just feel completely, beaten down. So, maybe we take a minute or a few minutes to kind of dig it down in that. What does that look like for the individual versus maybe an entire culture or group?
So yeah, that is interesting because in group dynamics you can start to get like where you may have somebody coming in that might be overall the group has really good cohesion, a lot of trust, but then you can like introduce somebody that may be trying to disrupt that.
Yeah.
And then the whole group dynamic is now shifted, and it can lead to a lot of problems within that group. So you have like whatever infiltration or something like that into the group, and then that can lead to a lot of disruption. So what do you do in that situation? Do you target that individual and you get them out of that group? Like how do you handle that?
Yeah. So I'll take a little lesson from special operations. I give them a lot of credit. They really put a lot of effort on the front end to filter out a lot of the non-hackers, right? Just the people who just physically they just can't perform, right? Because the non-performers, they're going to fall in that category you talked about, right? And they bring down the group through non-performance. So and special operations, they're really good at filtering out people, the non-hackers. And so basically having a set of standards that fit the mold of, who are the type of people who we want in the unit. And then there's the other side of it is once they actually get to the unit, they're pretty good about keeping a close eye on that sort of thing. Now that's a kind of extreme example, but I think it's a pretty good example from what I've seen with those who are in the special operations community. They're really good about feedback. Now the feedback may look different from place to place, right? But they're really good, and I think they acknowledge that, hey, we're all humans, and this is a hard job, and we're highly dependent upon each other. We're emotional humans, and yet we're expected to maintain emotional discipline. So I think having a pretty good view of the type of people who we want in that group, that setting, right? And then having standards that need to be met, and then we apply those standards before they even get into that group. And I'm fortunate. I've worked for some Fortune 500 companies, and a lot of them had really good interviewing processes. I remember one day we actually had almost a psychological profile. We had to go through the Gallup StrengthsFinder test or evaluation, and there was a Gallup interview that we had to do. And I got to see mine, and that was really impressive for like a 1 hour conversation with an interviewer from Gallup. And they were able to come up with a very good profile of me. And I know they had to do it for every employee. So I think that's helpful. But of course, then there's the other side of it. So there's the
vetting process in whatever your group is, and then you have a certain standard of ethics.
That's right.
And that you expect in the group, and set that standard, and otherwise you don't qualify.
That's right. And it's, and you got to stick with the standard, because everyone knows if you've gone through those gates, then you're probably okay. If you got the long tab, you're probably okay. So, and it's not perfect, but you got a pretty good rate of success. Of course, the other side of it is, the people who don't get through, or, for your normal units, you can have some real shitbags in there. And then that's a problem, because, a commander or a platoon sergeant may be stuck with some real dirtbags, and there's nothing they can do to get rid of them. You got to deal with this guy. Then I think that's the real issue. And I have a lot of sympathy for these commanding officers and these platoon sergeants. They have to deal with these dirtbags, and they're just real pieces of garbage, and they have to be pushed every single day just to do the basics. So and they fall in the category I think that you're talking about. That one person, they can completely demoralize a squad or a platoon or just a small group of people, you know. And I think you're asking the right question, like how do you deal with those people?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like once it becomes too unstable and the stability is getting shaken up too bad, like they got to go. Like,
Yeah.
what are the metrics there?
If I could refer to another group I really appreciate called Small Unit Leadership, and you know, just for the audience, Greg and I we're putting together another session for to talk about leadership. So I read this book called Small Unit Leadership: A Common Sense Approach. It is by Colonel Dandridge Malone, and he talks about this idea that you've got these snipers, the people who sit in the corners and they just snipe, and they're always taking pot shots at leadership. They're taking pot shots at the high achievers, and he has a very good approach about that. He said basically, as a leader, you got to identify those people as quickly as possible, and you got to shut them down. Now he had a couple different approaches around this, but you know, one way is you can just confront them immediately and said, look, you're what we call a sniper. You're kind of a piece of shit. And that's the book right there. Thank you. And you're kind of a piece of shit, and I'm going to get your Wheaties. Right. And you know, I appreciate that. And then others, he identified, when you identify those snipers, you can also kind of not quite ostracize them, but put them in a position where the damage is limited. And I think a lot of good leaders, they're very practical in the way they deal with these things. Like, look, this guy's on my roster. I got no choice. So I'm going to put this person in a place that he can't really do much damage, and really get them away from the main body. So yeah, this is a great book. I really appreciate it. And he's very methodical about his approach. And it's not just about military. This is, you know, like so many other military thinkers, it can be applied to almost every other aspect of human experience.
Yeah, man. You know, we have our little local freedom cell group, and these are things that are always on my mind because I've been doing the group for so long, and really it's like I want to have people that are really interested in finding a pathway toward being more autonomous themselves and doing the best job that I can to help everyone skill up, because I see that being just more beneficial in the aggregate, that if enough people have more skills and training that and trust between each other, then you're going to be better off in the long run overall. Because like there's so many people out there now that are like, well, I don't want to go down to the gas station to get my whatever White Claw and my donuts or something. I don't know. Like, not even willing to go a little ways to get their stuff and just get it delivered to them. Well, what's going to happen when it gets really tough?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to solve a problem at that point if your whole thinking has been around all this convenience, you know? So you really, I think overall you want to build a group, and these questions, I've thought about it for a while, and it really is, it's like you kind of have to do some things together as a group and kind of do some challenging things, I think. And then you kind of have to see how people are gonna act in those challenging circumstances, I think.
Did you ever see a movie called Cube? It came out in the early 2000s.
Oh, is that the one where they're like in these different rooms?
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever,
it. Yeah.
These things.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a great movie, and I love movies like that because they take people who they're kind of forcefully merged together, right? And they're put into a stressful situation, not of their making, and they just turn up the stress. They basically take one element away that is kind of like their escape valve, right? Or their escape hatch. And they force people to go through this really strange, stressful path. And I think Cube did a really great job of showing what it's like to be in these very stressful situations. It's sci-fi, but it really gets into human psychology. And you know, that's the movie right there. And actually I think there were 3 movies altogether. And it was good. And it just showed a lot of what you talked about, Greg, which I think you're spot on, is, you know, you got to see how people react in those stressful times. And there's no way to know exactly how people are going to behave in stressful situations, but you try to simulate as best you can. And I think you're spot on with the idea that you got to try things out as a group and minimize the number of stress points that are out there, and try to come up with solid methodologies for minimizing stress and maximizing performance.
I think that's where the training comes into play, because if you're actively taking some training courses, then you are, you know, going into a situation that you're not comfortable with, probably. It's something that you're not familiar with, and you're there to learn and soak in information, and you're probably not going to be comfortable. Like, in the different trainings that I've taken, I know I've been like stressed out. Like,
Yeah.
you go to training, like, you're not the most, whatever they're going to be teaching or throwing at you, you're not familiar with, and it can, kind of be stressful and stress you out, and gonna challenge you, gonna get you to be uncomfortable. But when you come out of that training, then you've got that little bit more knowledge that you did before, and some techniques and some things that you can work on that you found in yourself that you were doing through that training. But if you were never exposed to that, then when put into a stressful situation, then you're probably going to fold, right? Because it's what you rise to your highest level of training or something like that, or your lowest level of training.
Yeah.
So if you have no training at all and you're sitting there watching your Netflix and ordering stuff on DoorDash, and that's what you do all the time, and you've never gone to do any kind of training or like kind of challenge yourself in any way, like even going for a long hike or something like that, can you put a backpack on? Can you walk like 10 miles?
Right.
Can you do that in a day?
Yeah.
So
I don't know if some of the audience here is familiar with Magpul, Magpul. They're a company that makes tactical gear, but they also have courses on a variety of different topics. One of them is called The Art of the Carbine. One of the courses, and you can get it on DVD. Great course. And it was put together by Chris Costa, I think, was one gentleman, and Travis was the other gentleman. Great instructors. And they talk about something called potentiation, which is basically increasing your potential. And so, Greg, you touched on something that's so important, is you learn something that maybe the skill is a little bit of a bump that we get, but more importantly, there's the potentiation, is the potential to learn on the next round is actually greater than the current round or previous rounds. And that's where the whole concept of, building, skill building comes from, or crawl, walk, run, right, as the Army says. And just the concept of potentiation is so important. And so if we could kind of bring this full circle.
I think it leads back into the learned helplessness.
Yes, exactly, right. So, people who have been the victim of learned helplessness, they've actually had negative potentiation, right? And they have been taught at an unconscious level, you have no potential, right? You have no ability to become better. And it's almost like a movement backwards in time towards infancy, right? So we're taking adults and turning them into infants. There's infantilization that happens with these individuals. And I think that's so important. to kind of identify that you know, if we run the film forward, it's increased potentiation. If we run the film backwards, it's decreased potentiation. You know, and I think we can kind of all connect with that at some degree.
And you got to take these manageable steps, right? Like you're not, you have to realize that like you're running a marathon, you're not doing it. It's not a sprint. Like you're going to have points in this where you're getting outside of your comfort zone and you're doing things that are not in your norm, and that you're probably going to suck at a bunch of stuff for a while.
Yeah.
You're going to be really bad.
Yeah.
And that's okay though. Like that's part of the process of your growth, is that you're going to be a little bit better than the day before, and the day before that, the day before that. And all these things, instead of looking at like, oh, well, I keep failing, like look at them that I've found things that didn't work and I've learned, I'm learning. Like these are lessons that I'm learning. Not, these aren't failures, these are lessons. Like I need to continue to improve and see these lessons and keep moving forward. And I guess kind of like don't be too hard on yourself during that process.
That's right. One of the best encapsulations I ever heard of what you just expressed was a talk show host in Seattle on 77 WKTH, and he said, "Get comfortable with being uncomfortable." And obviously it's stuck. It's been years since I've listened to this program, and so I thought that was a great encapsulation of that whole idea. And it's hard. It's hard to get comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's what you just said. That's where the growth is. Another encapsulation I heard this on the What Is Money podcast with Robert Breedlove.
Oh yeah, he's had some really good people on there.
He's great interviews with great people. And the statement I heard was, pain is the edge of enlightenment. And I thought that was a great way. It's the doorway, right? It is not enlightenment by itself, right? But it's right there. And if a person can cross that transom, they can achieve some sort of enlightenment in its own right.
Yeah, it's the catalyst for growth. I think like a lot of stuff that you go through in life and really hard stuff, you can let it destroy you. You can choose to be the victim and let it destroy you. You can make that choice and you can go that route, but it's not going to lead you anywhere. It's going to lead you down the learned helplessness path.
Yeah.
And you're always going to feel like a victim. You're always going to feel like I can't do anything to change my circumstances. Or you can take the opposite route where you can choose to say, hey, no, this isn't my situation. I don't want to have this situation anymore. And I want to grow through this. And I want to do some challenging stuff to get me to the next point that I want to be at. Like I might not be there right now, but I know I can get to a better place. Like,
yep. One of the comments in here, so we have Anna Young 9393, build psychological muscle memory helps. Yeah, I totally agree. That's 100%. And it's the reps. And I think, Greg, you kind of talked about that. You touched on that concept of just building reps, just continue to do it over. And that's a great point.
Physical exercise, I think, it relates to so many things that and it's free. The fitness is free. Like you don't need a gym subscription. You can go and do some calisthenics. Like you go do some push-ups, you can do some sit-ups, you can go duck walk around.
Right.
Like a duck walks recently. Those are really good. Like you don't need to have a gym membership. Like if you're poor as hell, you're dirt ass poor, you can go out there and just start doing some stuff.
That's right.
Go work out in your yard, like there's plenty of that. But like through figuring out the repetitions and like figuring out like, okay, these are some metrics now of where I am with progress. Like I've done so many reps this time. Now I can do this many more.
Yeah.
Like you can see the improvement starting. and you have something measurable that you can look at to see like how you're improving.
Yeah.
And it just relates to all this stuff, you know. It's like those little things that you do on a consistent basis are going to change your mentality, to give you that empowerment to say, yeah, I have the capability. Yeah, I can do this. I've done these hard things. I know that I can overcome that because of these hard things that I've faced and I've put myself through. So
One encapsulation I heard of that idea, because I totally agree with you, right? There's so many different factors, and we gotta put them together. As a young martial artist, my sensei, Dr. Chris Vigiano, talked about the concept of UPA, Unified Power of Attack, and it's taking all these different factors, physical, psychological, spiritual, and we put them together, and we focus them into one place, one direction. You know, we don't have scattered efforts. And I think a lot of what you just talked about, you know, goes along with that. It's the physical effort, the psychological effort that is necessary, and you know, we're focused. We're not taking our forces and diluting them over some large area, right? We have them very focused into a very small area, and we're choosing intensity versus extensity, right? And if we choose extensity, we're just diluting our forces, and we're not effective at all, right? On any of those fronts. Versus if we're intensive with our forces, if we're very focused, we can achieve, you know, quite a bit in one direction.
the next question is, if you have somebody that you know that's in this situation, how do you approach them? Are you tough on them? Do you do tough love, or do you do like you take a softer approach with it and like, you know, just be like, all right, man, yeah, or with a you know, with a man or a woman, you know, maybe their approaches are different. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I will say my first thought and the whole thing is, don't deny a person their birthright of pain. And the reason why I say that is because I think most of us, the vast majority, we actually are good, caring people, right? We don't like seeing people in pain right off the bat. That's just a visceral reaction we have. We don't want people to be uncomfortable. We don't want them to be hurting. But like you just said, you know, a few minutes ago, you know, there's that pain, and we got to get past that transom, and we grow, right? And so I think what's happened, and we've seen this with helicopter parenting, right, is they want to take away all the pain, all the discomfort, and we've stripped children of the birthright of pain. We've stripped them of the ability to improve potentiation, right? And in doing so, I think that's the biggest crime out of any of this, right? And it doesn't so that doesn't mean that we're trying to put someone in a bad place. We're not trying to put someone in an awkward place. But if we're constantly coddling people, we're removing the natural feedback in that mechanism, that natural forcing function, which motivates a person to do better and better and better, right? So I'm not for being hard on people, being harsh with people, and definitely not wagging my sanctimonious finger in their faces. But I'm also 100% on board with people knowing that if they're dealing with me, that I'm not going to strip away their birthright of pain, and I'm going to be supportive in a healthy fashion. I just had lunch with a good friend of mine, Laura, today, and we were just talking about this concept. I was talking about the whole concept of learned helplessness with her, and she is, I think she's kind of in agreement with us in the whole idea of, it's so easy for any of us just to rush in and we want to fix it, and we have to fight that urge to to do that. So I guess maybe that's the first thing, is fight the urge to fix it.
Yeah. Let the person work through it in a healthy manner. But maybe you give them a suggestion or two, or
yeah,
and then let them handle it and figure it out.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. So I think you asked a good question in regards to what do we do with an individual, and I want to kind of do a compare and contrast with not just individuals but groups, large groups of people. So I'm fortunate. I've lived and worked overseas for a while. I've also had interactions with different cultures in different places, and learned helplessness is unfortunately pretty pervasive in other countries. And I'm not casting moral aspersions. There's no judgment here. I'm just trying to provide objective observations here. And I saw this quite a bit in India when I was living and working over there. And there's definitely a sense of for certain people in that society, there's just massive cultural learned helplessness over there. So it was.
Because
It's
you
almost
had the
inverted.
caste
do.
system, correct? Like
They do. So
you're
not
born
officially.
in a certain born in a certain family or something like that, you're in that caste, or
That's right.
like you're stuck there basically.
Yeah. So they don't have it officially anymore, but it's definitely a part of a pervasive part of the culture over there. And so, I was obviously, yes, I was a foreigner, but I was mentally, culturally, I was definitely an outsider because, I was so used to just like, hey, we need to power through this. We need to get shit done. And their mentality is not like that over there at all. And, it's, and so in many ways, I had to fight that, that tendency. It was coming at me from all different angles, just like, no, slow down, things are fine, and we can take our time. And that, so I had to kind of armor up, and I was consistently getting frustrated. I was a young guy. I was 28 years old, and getting frustrated with dealing with that. So in some ways, they were successful because they were frustrating me. So I had to. There were certain techniques I had to, implement to kind of fight that.
Okay.
So I think that's something that we as individuals we can look at that. What I've seen overseas, and here's I think one of the most famous examples, historically speaking. I think we've all seen this before, is the Soviet Union. And we've heard so many times that those poor people were just completely beaten down. One of the best encapsulations I heard of this idea is we're talking about working in the Soviet Union, working in a factory. We pretend to work and they pretend to pay us.
Right.
And it was just they knew the work conditions were crap. They knew the things that they were doing were not effective. They didn't have any tangible results. They didn't have any tangible positive results in what they were doing. And so they were just going through the motions with this crap. And I think that is learned helplessness writ large across an entire, culture of well over 100 million people. And if I had to guess, they probably had a similar feeling in China at about the same time.
Yeah, tyrannical regimes and oppression. They're they talk about how when the population is so comfortable they won't revolt, but like in those examples you had extreme suffering going on with the people, and yet there was no revolt. But a lot of it was because it was like a self-enforced thing where neighbors would tell on neighbors, and people were kind of encouraged to turn against each other, and therefore there was no meaningful resistance during those times. That like you said, I read Yeonmi Park's book about North Korea, man, and what she talked about in there, like in one part of the book, she was talking about how you dare not speak above a whisper because even the birds can hear you. Like,
Yeah.
if you talked anything that was negative about the leader, anything like that, then you could get your whole family sent into a prison camp, like a forced labor camp or something. And it wasn't just one person got punished; it was the whole family that got punished.
Yeah.
And so, you start getting into systems like that, and then it does, like even to this day, North Korea is still, they're the hermit kingdom, man. Like they're still subjugating their people to this kind of stuff. Like it is insane.
Yeah.
Like if you, everybody, in order to live, like by Yeonmi Park, you should read that book because
I was going to ask you, what did you think about what did you think about the book? I haven't read the book yet.
it was so sad. Like it was sad, but it was like that she got out of all that and still was able to like be a functioning person after the end of everything that she went through. Like growing up in North Korea, her father was sent to a camp because he was caught doing a black market precious metals deal to like
Yeah.
keep his family going and
Yeah.
and alive and stuff like that. And that, crossing after like when she left North Korea, um, because they thought that her sister had left, and so they were on kind of like she took her mom to in order to like try to get and find her sister, and then that got her in the whole sex slavery in China. Like they didn't realize, they thought like somebody was going to help them get across into China, but that's what they're doing with North Koreans that are escaping. They're getting them into this whole sex slavery thing because all of their one child policy, there's so many men and there's not enough women for all the men in China.
Mm.
So there's this huge like sex slavery thing going on in China where they're taking the North Korean women into China as sex slaves. So yeah, she made it through. She made it through all that because like she had to threaten to kill herself in order to get out of a situation that she was in with this one guy that was like that owned her. She was sold to this guy, this Chinese guy, and she stood. I guess she stood up to him in such a way, and he had somewhat of like he cared for her in some way that she talked about in the book, that he actually bought her mom from somebody that she was sold to in China. And then they worked with some South Korean Christian missionaries that were working with some of the defectors from North Korea, was able to cross the Gobi Desert, make it to Mongolia, thought that the Mongolians were going to pick her up and then ship her back to North Korea because they do that from time to time, apparently. Got caught crossing the Gobi Desert, like freezing cold, made it through all that, and then eventually got her way through the Christian missionaries to South Korea, and then was able to like get going from there. But she also had to do like cam girl stuff in like South Korea, apparently, in the book. And so, she told her story about what she had gone through and everything. And then I think that got her, she was learning English in South Korea, basically reading everything that she could, reading constantly, because she said they receive their education is all about the leader. So everything is about like stuff that the leader comes up with. Like there was no like 1 + 1 = 2. It was 1 + 1 = a bigger one, because that's what the leader said, and that's how he did his math. So it's a very like you to see where things can go if people don't speak up and don't say something that they see going on in society and stand up for what is right when they know things are heading in a tyrannical direction. And that's the hell that can be manifest is, what's going on in North Korea. It's still going on today.
Yeah.
Like it was very eye opening for me. It was very eye opening.
To bring it back to the topic of today's episode, she's almost the antithesis of learned helplessness. She did everything she possibly could to avoid the attitude of helplessness. She just kept fighting. And I've heard her speak. She gave a great speech. I'm sure it's based roughly on the book, but it was heartbreaking to see this.
Mm-hmm.
So Anna Young, 9393. During the Cultural Revolution, the powerful demand that you turn against their parents, teachers, as a way to isolate individuals. It is all about power and control. Yep, totally agree with that. Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
There were the four during the so-called Cultural Revolution, Mao's Cultural Revolution. There were the four, and Anna, you may have to help me with this. There were the four ways. They had to get rid of the four ways, I think it's called. There was old way of thinking. I'm sorry, the four olds. That's what it was. The old way of thinking, old traditions, old education, and it was something like that. And it was Mao's attempt at trying to sow dissent amongst the generations, and basically get them fighting with each other and not with him.
Yeah, that's what the communists have to do is erase history. So because what they're doing is building this new communist utopia. So we have to look toward the future. We can't be doing things the old way in the past. We're building this new beautiful utopia that's new. The old stuff doesn't work. Like we've been doing the old stuff for a long time. Like we have a better solution. So don't learn about the history because we've got all the answers.
Yeah. So let's I think we're doing a good job of kind of digging into this a little bit. So I think all of us have at some point dealt with at least one person who is that perpetual malcontent, that person who it really is, they're so deeply ingrained with learned helplessness and it spills over like they're like crabs in a bucket. One person tries to get out and they're going to pull that person back down. What are the methods for identifying those malcontents? What are the methods for identifying people who are of the learned helplessness mentality? What are the signs that we can look for and do it with high levels of confidence? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think this learned helplessness, like going back to what was mentioned in the study, was like severe depression would be the signs that somebody's caught in this learned helplessness. Probably like withdrawal from a lot of people, like not making it to like events, like backing out on a lot of things, probably where there would have probably been like normally would have gone to or whatever, like some kind of event or something that they would have taken a part of, but they're just like avoiding a lot of stuff, and withdrawing. I think that would probably be one sign of someone going into this state. Like I've seen myself like that in the past, like I talked about in going through some things, and yeah, you especially nowadays, if you're on your own and you've got, like I was in this house on my own, and just wanting to just like kind of get away from people and keep the blinds closed. Like it's it's a total it's a total like the opposite of what you should do when you look at this. Like when you feel that, you kind of like want to close yourself out off to the world, um, and maybe put yourself in like a kind of a shell. But that's like the opposite of what you need to do. Um, but yeah, I think like probably just kind of just an overall like Eeyore attitude
Hmm.
and a real withdrawal from normal situations, like maybe like self care, um uh hygiene, stuff like that.
Those are really good. I hadn't thought of it from that point of view of just the whole concept of withdrawing, right? Withdrawing from healthy habits, right? Whether it be interacting with other people or, like you said, self care, hygiene, things like that. That's a really good point to put in that perspective.
Any young 9393, don't underestimate the majority of people trust the political establishment, including deep red conservative parts of the country.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that. So let's kind of dive into that, because I think that's a good point. And it's the concept of learned helplessness, but on a mass scale, and then applied to the whole concept of government as a model, right? And I think that there are parts of the population that they are not only comfortable with deferring to the government, but actually abdicating almost every bit of personal responsibility to the government. And I've met people like this, and I'm not gonna talk about which side of the political aisle does it most, but I do think there's one side of the political aisle that does it more than the other, and they are very happy with just saying government will take care of it. Government is amazing. It knows exactly what we should do, and if we would just get in line and do what government tells us to do, everything would be fixed. Kind of like what you just said a minute ago, Red, around we're the communists, we know what to do, and just do what we tell you to do.
Yeah, we're building your utopia. Like everybody's gonna have free stuff, and it's gonna be great. Um, Talking about the invisible fence people, uh, uh, invisible fence people around themselves in order to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Getting back to the topic of identifying people, so there's probably two major camps here. I think you did a really good job of encapsulating what are the passive steps that people take, in learned helplessness, in that mode, right? And I think you said it really well. Is they withdraw, right? And they withdraw from healthy habits. And then I've seen the other side is contrary to the passive side. There's the active side, and they really are the crabs in a bucket, right? So, and I've seen this quite a bit as a project manager and a business analyst. My job as a project manager or a business analyst is to push shit forward, just keep the project moving forward. And if we stumble, fine, not a big deal. We're going to regroup, we're going to reassess, and drive forward, and just salvage what we can and get this project over the finish line. And I found that the malcontents, those of the learned helplessness mentality, they will not only will they find reasons to fail, they will manufacture reasons to fail, and that's their active side of learned helplessness. And so that is their unconscious coming out and projecting onto other people that mentality that they have. And in many ways, I think that their unconscious, their insecurities, and their egos, they really bristle when they see others around them are succeeding, that they're pushing forward and actually accomplishing things. And because it doesn't fit with the model, the ego is covering up the insecurities. Say, let me talk in your voice for just a minute. I've got you, and that's when the ego comes forward and says, no, that solution won't work because of X, Y, Z reasons. And if they have to manufacture reasons for something to fail, they will do so. And I've even seen instances of people actually actively sabotaging efforts to accomplish a task or an activity. And so this gets into the whole concept of passive aggressiveness, right? And that stuff is really toxic, because passive aggressiveness, it's like trying to prove a negative. How do I prove that someone's engaging in passive aggressiveness? It's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
But that is people who are, in my opinion, people who have the learned helplessness mentality. They are masters at learned passive aggressive mode of operating, and it is so hidden, so much in the shadows, and so insidious. And in many ways, that's their attempt at trying to not necessarily control a situation, but it's their attempt at trying to influence a situation. And so it's influence, but in a very negative fashion. We look at influence in a positive, like how do I help other people? How do I help the team? And their method of control or influence is, how do I hurt the team? How do I keep goals from being accomplished? So it's interesting to see the passive and the active mode of those who learn helplessness.
Oh, I didn't think about that aspect, but yeah, you're talking about somebody that may feel like powerless in their situation, but in order to maybe feel like they have some kind of agency, that they will actively work towards sabotaging the effort.
Yeah, and it could be a team, right? It could be a group of people outside of anyone they're working with, and I've seen it with relationships, right? It's just so many good friends of mine. One partner is of the learned helplessness / passive aggressive bent, and they could just, if they don't ruin the relationship, they create a lot of stress in there, in that relationship.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I think as potential leaders, we all have that obligation to be able to step back from the hourly activity, the daily activity, kind of step back and assess, as Colonel Dandridge talked about, who are those snipers? Who are those people who can really sabotage effort? And in being able to kind of, if a leader can kind of sit back a little bit and just listen to conversation, you can usually find who are those snipers, because the way that they speak is constantly sabotaging. Oh, that'll never work, or he can't do that, or who does he think he is? Why does he think that he can accomplish that? That'll never work.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So you would ask, like, just open questions, like, how do you think, or how are you thinking about this situation, or
Yeah.
what are some ideas you have, like something along those
right.
lines?
And I think that's a good way of looking at it. There's one other thing. I think Colonel Dandridge puts this in his book. If he didn't, I've seen other leaders do this. You take the person who is your sniper, the person with learned helplessness, and you put them in charge of some effort. And what happens is that transforms the person, because now they know they're going to be held accountable for something. And I've seen people, they do a complete 180 when they're put in charge of some effort. It could be something as simple as, go clean up the trash in this area, and they really come alive, when they're empowered, basically, with even a small amount of leadership position. They can become positive influencers in that aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's taking the whole thing and turning it on its head. And like I said, I think Colonel Dandridge talks about that, but I've seen other people do it. And it's one of those things that when I've seen it done, it always astounds me, because I'm always like the mindset, like, no, you're gonna do this, and it's like, no, I don't need to force someone to do it. Just put them in charge and let them run or fail.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. That's a cool approach. I haven't thought about that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did. So you did. I guess let's take a
Big
little
break?
comment break here.
Yeah.
And you submitted a little video here that we could play.
So if anyone has ever lived in Japan or worked with people from Japan, you'll see that this is this is so Japanese.
All right. Let's see here. We'll go full screen with it. Maybe I can't. All right. Let's play this guy.
People wanted more, so Jing started building more, like an elevator.
I wish I knew how to like replay these from the beginning.
I know.
Let's see.
Can you refresh the page and then leave it unmuted?
Yeah, I'll do that.
2 years building an entire town for his pets, and it will blow your mind. It all started with an apartment for his Shiba Inu and cats, but when people saw the excruciating level of detail that Jing put into it, it went viral. I mean, it is so realistic that it makes it look like the cat is the thing that's fake. Bro, he even created an underground den for his hamster, and then inside that, another even smaller room for his spider. What the hell? And so naturally, people wanted more. So Jing started building more, like an elevator, a mini robo-vacuum, a gaming room complete with a sneaker collection, figurines, and model cars. And yes, this apartment even has running water. He then spent the next 2 months building an underground parking garage for his pets and even added cameras and put Shiba-san as the head of security. But you know what his pets really needed after that? A seaside retreat to get away from the city. So bro built them an entire private island. Not that kind of island. It took him over a month to build, and it comes with real flowing water, a painted horizon, and is themed on how to train your dragon. And thinking a private island was probably a good place to stop, he then finds out that Ting Hao was pregnant with 7 kittens. And so he suddenly realized this apartment wasn't big enough for a growing family. So naturally, he started building an entire town. Over the months, he built his pets a spa, a supermarket, yes, with real meat, a bank, a cinema, which took him another 2 months to build because he had to 3D print over 1,000 separate parts. He built them a billiards club, a Meow Donald's, and even copped his hamster a cyber quad and his cats a cyber truck. But by far, the biggest addition to Cat Town was the working subway station. This took Jing over 4 months to build. And some of the most challenging parts was figuring out how to open the train doors and platform doors simultaneously, and also how to create a working escalator. But of course, he achieved both of them beautifully. And today, Cat Town has affordable transportation. Now, the biggest question he gets asked all the time is why? Why spend all this time and money on your pets like this? Well, he said that it started just as a fun little idea to attract more customers to his wife's pet store, which she recently opened. But then it just spiraled out of control because he loves what he does and it makes his son happy. This man has spent the last
Oh, that's good. So that's a nice little ending there. It was like his son gets a kick out of it. Yeah, that's wild, dude. That he's built all that stuff. Wow.
When I first saw it, before the actual animals are in there, and I'm looking, I was like, okay, it's just a subway, because of all the level of detail. It didn't hit me at all. And then I saw the cat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the level of detail he put in there is just phenomenal.
Yeah, the hours you would have to spend on doing all those little details. That's incredible.
And now it has a life of its own.
The Cat Town inside inside his apartment or something like that?
I guess so. I don't know. My favorite part is Meow Donald's.
Oh man.
Yeah.
What some people will do for their pets, like they'll but yeah, that's that's a fun story. Meow Donald's. It's a whole cat city, cat village.
Yeah. Do we want to do a logical fallacy?
Yeah, let's see that. You brought up the ad hominem, which is that the one that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So argumentum ad hominem, also known as personal abuse, personal attacks, abusive fallacy, damning the source, name calling, refutation by caricature, against the person, against the man. Description, attacking the person making the argument rather than the argument itself. When the attack on the person is completely irrelevant to the argument the person is making. So the logical form is, number one, person one is claiming Y. Number two, person one is a moron. Number three, therefore, Y is not true. And, you know, we've seen this. You know, kids are just masters at the ad hominem attack.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
you're a butt face.
yeah, exactly. Right. Timmy makes an argument. Well, Timmy's a butt face, right? Therefore, what Timmy said is dumb. Right. So
Therefore, this person is irrelevant.
Yeah.
This topic is irrelevant.
Yeah. And you know, and so it's extended, right, into adulthood, especially politics, right? And you know, so and so made a claim. Well, that person is a Nazi. That person is an X. That person's a Y. It's like, okay, but can we stick to the substance of the discussion? You know,
Right. It's an easy out for if he can attack somebody's character or something like that. It's an easy out for you to to attempt to rhetorically win an argument, but it's really easy to see. It's really easy to see when somebody starts to go to that like, okay, well, they ran out of stuff, so now they're just gonna start calling names.
Yeah. So what do you feel would be the how does one identify it, and then how does one defend against it? What are your thoughts on that?
Identifying an ad hominem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just whenever somebody's goes to some kind of attack on your character or goes towards just doing, you know, something absurd, basically, like, you know, just it's usually some kind of attack towards somebody's character to like make them look like their claims are irrational in some way. And so I mean, it's pretty easy to spot, in my opinion. I mean, just I guess go watch Piers Morgan or something. I mean,
yeah, that's a good call out.
You watch Piers Morgan's debate discussions, and it's just like a lot of times they break down into like people just calling each other names and stuff like that.
That's right.
One of them was really good. That this Jay Dyer. I watched one with Jay Dyer, and he had like three other theologian type guys on there, and this one guy, he kept calling him Bishop Tilda Swinton, which is like some actress or something like that.
Yeah. He was she played Gabriel in the movie Constantine with what's his face? The guy from the Matrix. Yeah. She was also one of the wizards in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. So he kept calling him that, and you know, a lot of those discussions kind of break out into these shouting matches, and people will just just start throwing those things out there. But that people like watching that stuff, like, because it's when people start to throw that stuff around. I guess we're in such a non-confrontational type society, I guess, that like anytime you see people like arguing or whatever, like people are really drawn to conflict and like kind of watching some kind of conflict go down.
It's almost like the Kardashians of politics, right? They have to sensationalize stuff.
Yeah, you want to see like, hey, this guy really got him, you know, in that talk or whatever.
Right.
And so, I mean, recognizing it, it's usually always like somebody trying to throw mud at your face. And And then how do you defend against it is, yeah, I don't know. Once it goes to that point, what are your thoughts on that? I guess you have to have the stronger argument really and hold to your argument.
So yeah, so what I've done in the past is when someone used the ad hominem attack, I just call it out. I just say, yeah, just say, look, obviously you don't have an argument because the only thing you have is the ad hominem attack, right? The only thing you can do is try to make me look bad. This has nothing to do with the issue at hand. And then this is something I've learned just through a lot of trial and a whole lot more error is at that point, I'm only debating with the person, not because I'm trying to convince the person, but because I'm trying to work with the audience, whoever is watching, right? If there's no audience, I'm just debating with the person, I'll probably just walk away. There's no point in it. But I then try to turn the person's behavior into a lesson, or not a lesson, a learning experience for everyone else around, and just show them that you can push back against ad hominem attacks. You can push back against these logical fallacies, right? And just call it out. Just call it out in plain sight for everyone to see, and then just say, look, you obviously cannot, you can't defend your position, and you cannot oppose what I'm asserting, and I'm just going to show everyone what your methodology is, and I'm not going to be apologetic about it at all.
Yeah. So reformulate your argument and get back to me.
Right. Exactly. That's a good way to say it. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. And if it keeps going to an ad hominem, then, obviously you don't have a good position that you're standing on.
Yeah. And, and obviously anyone can use the ad hominem attack, right? But, taking this full circle, those who engage in active efforts, passive aggressive behavior, especially those who have unfortunately learned helplessness, the ad hominem attack that's a really easy one to do, right? Because they can't go after the solution. If we as a team, we have to accomplish some task or we have to accomplish some activity, they can't go after the solution. They can't go after the methodology. So what do they have? Oh, Jay is a horrible project manager. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's never done this before. And I've been the receiving end of all this, right? So just kind of have to let it roll off your back. But yeah, that's, so that's kind of connecting several things: learned helplessness, passive aggressiveness, and then the mechanism is ad hominem attack, right? Mm-hmm. And if a person can, especially a person in a leadership position, can recognize that sooner rather than later. I will say here's the one thing to do is avoid reacting emotionally. Be very calm, but be very direct, and don't allow oneself to be bullied, and be professionally assertive. And I think that's very important in that situation.
Professionally assertive. What could you give an example of that? Like maybe some scenario or something, and how?
Yeah. So
professionally assertive.
Yeah. So I think assertiveness comes in two flavors, right? There's positive and negative. And when I say that, meaning that which promotes positivity and that which promotes derision amongst people, right? So in the negative sense, being assertive from a pernicious point of view or damaging point of view is just trying to bully other people, talking over them, using logical fallacies, trying to make fun of people, right? But then the professionals, being professionally assertive is maintaining a calm demeanor, right? Disallowing people from cutting you off, So if a person tries to talk over you, and I've done this many, many times, I will just keep on talking, just talk right over the other person. I don't have to raise my voice, but I disallow them from trying to seek out an edge with an audience, because what they're doing is they're hoping that when they talk, I'll stop talking, right? And so by me just continuing to talk, just going over the top of them, that shows that I'm not going to be bullied, right? So that's important. And then also not quite talking down to the person, because I don't think that's a good approach, but also talking to the audience and just calling them out for bad behavior. And I'm 100% of the mindset that we need to treat people with dignity and respect, right? Until they prove otherwise. And for as long as they haven't disproven the need for dignity and respect, I'll treat them with dignity and respect. But then also the idea that I'm not going to get into an artillery fight with a person. I'm not going to go back and forth, right? And the ability to dismiss a person, especially in public, and say, "I'm sorry, but this is inappropriate. I'm not going to discuss this with you," and just walk away. The ability just to walk away. A lot of people are impressed by that. If you have the ability to maintain emotional mastery and control, and not get caught up in that, most people are typically impressed with that. And that's so that I kind of put that in the realm of professionally assertive.
Okay. Yeah, so you're not like actually, I guess, you said that you would call somebody out in that scenario.
I would, yeah, but again, do it in a professional, calm fashion, right? And just say, look, this is the methodology you're using, i.e., you're using the ad hominem attack, which is not valid. Let's just call it what it is, and therefore you don't have a point. And just do it, because how many times have we seen?
Leave it at that and move forward.
Yeah, exactly. How many times have we seen
like,
a
hey,
person
can we move forward with this discussion in a positive way?
Yep. And we've all been the victim of people using, attacks on us or logical fallacies. And then for hours, days, weeks afterwards, we're like, oh, I should have said X, right? And we don't realize that whatever method is being used against us, right? And unfortunately, that just requires a lot of experience to recognize it in the moment. And I think that a lot of people are, and we're all prone to it. We're all prone to being attacked in that way, especially if we don't recognize the methodology that's being used against us. And I think just calling it out immediately in some ways disarms it, because then it removes the emotional aspect of it. And now probably don't want to get too nerdy. Hey, you're using the ad hominem logical fallacy against me, right? Right? Be a little more sophisticated, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important, but maintaining that calm demeanor, showing the audience that you can be calm, that you can dismantle a person's argument in real time right there, and then just like you said before, we're gonna move forward, right? You want to come with us? That's cool. You're either on the train or under the train, and so this is the direction we're gonna go, and then just leave. What are they gonna do about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But I think the worst thing that we can do is give the person a stage, give the person a spotlight, because that's what people like people who are of that mentality. That's what they love. That's their attempt at trying to create control and influence the realm, even if it is negative, is a spotlight. That's one of the worst things to do. And good leaders know how to cut that off very quickly. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. When I was doing my first ERP implementation, we were implementing Oracle, and I had already been an instructor for several years, but we all had to go through the train the trainer program, and it was really well done. And I give the guys a lot of credit, the ones who taught us. And one of the things was basically dealing with malcontents. And the instructor, used me as an example, and he was the malcontent. I was the instructor. It was a scenario, and he did a great job getting me emotionally entangled, in the situation. And he paused the scenario and says, "Do you see what's happening?" And it wasn't just me; it was everyone in my class. He says, "Do you see how we're going back and forth? That's the worst thing to do. do not get into a two-way rifle range by surprise with each other. You know, don't get in these back and forths, right? You got to find a way to cut it off immediately. And you know, there's different solutions, but get that person out of there, whether physically or metaphorically. You got to cut that off.
So what kind of training was that?
So this is called Train the Trainer, and I think Honeywell developed this several years ago, and it's basically training people to become trainers of other people. So, you know, this is what we hope teachers and professors have. Unfortunately, it's not that common, which is basically teaching people how to teach people, right? And it's having methodology, solid techniques for teaching. And you know, the real Honeywell program is I think it's a couple weeks long. It's no joke. Apparently, it's really intense. Ours was, I think, it was a condensed 2-day program because we were kind of under the gun. But the real one's no joke. And many of the big consulting firms like Deloitte, they have their people go through Train the Trainer, and it's really impressive. And they break everything down. They will take a look at how a person stands in front of the class, how they speak. Do they use filler words such as the way that they use touch, turn, talk, you know, little techniques like that when you're presenting on a screen. So it's pretty intense. And you know, you talked before about you're uncomfortable, right? And because you know, I haven't done this before, these other people were better at it than I am, and the instructors put me in a pressure cooker. That was a good example. And I was already a decent instructor, and they were able to put me in a pressure cooker as well. So I give those guys credit. I still remember their names too. And they were good. So if anyone ever has the opportunity to go through Train the Trainer, I recommend it. And for those who are in special forces, they basically have special forces. So this is specifically the Green Berets. They have 2 directives. FID, Foreign Internal Defense, and UW, Unconventional Warfare. And Foreign Internal Defense is basically a special forces A team, a 12-man team going into some foreign land and training partisans how to defend themselves. But specifically what they do is they go through Train the Trainer, and that 12-man special forces team will train the cadre who are to be the instructors. And then those instructors turn around and they will train a company or battalion size element, right? So the Green Berets have to go through Train the Trainer, right? And then they have to turn around and deploy Train the Trainer to the cadre in foreign lands. And that's part of Foreign Internal Defense.
Yeah, when I think about a lot of the stuff on how people can organize and be effective as groups, like it does a lot of this stuff the military has been working on for years and studying, right? And they've studied this down to like a really high detailed degree to be able to figure out how to be effective with teams and have guys be effective and accomplish missions and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot in there that can be gleaned and found very useful.
Can you pull up, I think Wikipedia has a page on OODA loop, spelled OODA.
Okay.
And OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Direct, and Act. And it's basically that cycle that people need to go through. And you could apply this to any part of life, of seeing what the situation is, identifying the pattern, trying to find a solution, and then implementing the solution. And then you just iterate on that over and over again.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying this is because, you know, you're totally right in terms of what the military does. And when this was first rolled out by Colonel John Boyd, he basically said, you know, you're trying to help people have a methodical way of thinking, and then more importantly is be able to execute the OODA loop, iterate faster than the other guy. And it's called getting inside the OODA loop. And this is so important. And I think you touched on something so important in the sense that one of the things that military does really well, and same thing with law enforcement, is they try to provide methodologies or frameworks, mental frameworks for looking at something, and it gives them the ability to go through those OODA loops faster than the other guy, and their ability to act or react or proact is better. And many times it's not that they're necessarily more intelligent or anything like that, but they can execute in the OODA loop faster than the other person, and that's the edge that they're looking for.
Well, in a stressful scenario, right, you have to be making these decisions quickly. Otherwise, it could turn into a really bad state. So so you do need some kind of methodology to kind of like give you a plan of attack or a plan of action so that you're not like frozen when you're in some kind of like high pressure scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. From what I understand about Ranger School, full disclosure, I did not go through Ranger School. What I understand, they commonly call that leadership school. Is they're taking leadership principles and stress and they're merging them together, and you get someone who's carved out of wood when you come out of that. And it basically is the person's individual ability to continue to move through the OODA loop at a leadership level under conditions of stress, and it's done. And they're maintaining control, even though they're literally hallucinating because of lack of food and lack of sleep, right? But they're able to maintain tight control. And I think that's kind of in my opinion, that's the Ranger School is like the epitome of doing what you're talking about, Greg.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, some military guys that I know that have been through a bunch of stuff, like they remain calm in some crazy situations I've seen them in. Like they can still retain their calm, and it's pretty wild to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have the tools and techniques that you can deploy, so it just makes it that much easier. But yeah, we're on 2 hours, Jay. We want to wrap it up and let everybody know where people can find you and keep up with everything you got going on.
Yes, sir. So if you go to meetup.com, MEETUP, meetup.com, look for Bitcoin, Huntsville, crypto, and coffee. You'll find our group there. The only thing we're trying to do is help people be comfortable with Bitcoin, make sure that they understand what the technology is, how it works at a non-technical level, and basically apply it to their personal lives. We meet on the 4th Wednesday and the 4th Saturday of the month. It's online, so I've tried to reduce all the barriers to entry. You can come in your jammies if you want to, and we've actually had people who attend while they're driving. Your level of participation is entirely up to you. Whatever you want to do, whatever you're comfortable with, we're good with it. And we have a really great group of people, a wide range of experiences, people who the only thing they know about Bitcoin is how to spell the word, to people who can get down into the guts of the code, people who understand what the different data fields are, how transactions go through. And for us, and I have a presentation on this, I call Bitcoin's the ultimate freedom accelerator. For many of us, this is one of the best ways of spinning ourselves out of the system. And we've seen throughout history, countries that have a soft money standard or fiat currency standard, they always tilt towards authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and eventually they fail. And countries which have hard money standard, they usually tilt towards individual liberty and risk taking, innovation, prosperity, wealth building, and they end up respecting the rights of the individual. So that's really what many times we're aiming for. Just a great group of people. Everyone's very, very helpful to each other. We have our own Telegram chat, and we're just constantly posting articles in there, keeping each other apprised of latest developments around Bitcoin. And then sometimes people have questions like, hey, I'm trying to do something with the Sparrow wallet. Does anyone have an experience with the Sparrow wallet? Does anyone have any experience? Has anyone actually used Bitcoin? I think it was think it was In-N-Out Burger. I can't remember. One of those burger places, you can buy hamburgers with Bitcoin. So someone share their experience on that. That's what we're trying to do, is just help people spit themselves out of the system.
Excellent. Yeah. There's all kinds of cool tools out there too that I'm hearing about, and even like going through using Bitcoin if you want to make like maybe a larger purchase into Monero, something like that. So
That's right.
So yeah, there's lots of cool stuff. Go check out Jay's Bitcoin meetup, and if you don't want to be a sucker and get caught lacking in the power realm, I have a 1-day training course on solar power coming up on November 15th. Be looking out for an Eventbrite. I'm going to be posting that on the channel and posting it all over my social medias. The Tinker Tribe on X, YouTube, and my other social medias. So there will be an Eventbrite. It'll be 10 people. So the space is going to be limited to 10 people. November 15th, you'll learn how to set up a small solar power system as a backup power for your house, or if you want to set up something for a small cabin, maybe your bug out location, something like that. So that's
really
what
good.
we're going to cover in the course, and look out for that. I'll be posting it out and about on all my social medias, and subscribe to the channel, and hang around, because Jay and I are going to get into a lot more of these different conversations on all these different topics that I think can help people, and we keep brainstorming new stuff to come up with for you. So hang around.
Real quick, can you tell us just the general region of where the where the event is going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be in Crane Hill, Alabama. So it's going to be in Alabama, and so in Crane Hill, which is near Smith Lake. So
okay, awesome.
So stay tuned. I will be releasing that tomorrow. So I'll be putting the Eventbrite out tomorrow.
So there were 10 slots. Now there's only 9.
There you go. All right. Excellent. So y'all stay tuned, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Peace.